Inspiration. Welcome to the podcast. For those of you who haven't been here before, please remember to subscribe and like because it helps share my information. And tonight we're going to continue our series on addiction. And tonight I have Thomas with me, and I'm just so grateful and blessed to have him here, and I'm so grateful that he is willing to share his story. And we do this to try to help people. As all of you know, I've lost my son to addiction, and this is just my way of trying to help others out there who may be struggling with addiction. Also, I wrote a book, Pure Inspiration, Healing from Within, A Journey to Christ-like Consciousness, and my book also addresses addiction. But it's all about the healing from within and what void are we trying to fill inside ourselves. And how can we feel that? And it's a spiritual journey, whether it's recovery or it's coming out of a depression or anything that's affecting you in your life. We find that going within and searching within and finding that God within brings us to the light. And then we learn, to live in better ways and make better decisions. So I'm going to ask Thomas to say hello to y'all. And
hi, I'm Thomas Desmond.
And Thomas is going to share with us today about what he wants to share with us today. So go ahead, Thomas.
Yes, this is very impromptu. Kathy cuts my hair. She just gave me one haircut the other day. She is brand new. But so yeah, that's total impromptu. She's heard me talk about my addiction. I'm an alcoholic for about, I don't know, probably a couple of years. When you go to, I attend AA meetings, you'd have to say I'm an alcoholic. And I would say, in particular, I am Thomas, I'm an alcoholic. I have the disease of addiction. My particular addiction is alcohol. So I made that pretty clear from I don't know, about 2 years forward. And I said that for quite a while, and I quit saying it. But yes, I have 10 years of sobriety. April 23rd is my 10-year anniversary. And kind of rarefied air, really, in this whole disease of addiction thing that I've gotten through it. The statistics are not all that encouraging. Matter of fact, they're pretty low. It's somewhere around 10% would be a positive figure. But I was fortunate enough that, as I said to myself, I went to 2 treatment centers, and I said to myself in the first treatment center that this God thing's going to come in real handy right now.
Oh, he is good, isn't he? He's so good.
In particular, Jesus Christ. So I even though I was an addict and alcoholic, I continued my prayer. So that was, I'm unique in that way too for the program, because some people have an obstacle with believing in God. But I'll talk about that in a little bit. But so I had that going for me, and I went through 2 treatment centers, and but it really was that was the case. That's what addiction becomes. Your only hope is it's spiritual healing. As I would tell the story in AA, we have this disease of addiction. We have this disease that that we have, and nobody really spends a whole lot of time in the medical community to look into this disease of addiction. It's just the way it is. They just don't spend any time on it. So they really haven't come with any steadfast cure for this disease, and it has no cure of any kind. They don't prescribe anything to you. And what it becomes is entirely a spiritual program and spiritual healing. I'm even kind of half bad at being a sponsor because I get right to that right away because I've seen too many people that have died from it, and it becomes God. It talks a lot about God, but that's what it becomes. But you hear, and I've had several people, that are friends that have died, but it was the darndest thing. You just can't get people. It always becomes like you're witnessing. If you've ever done any witnessing, and you know how difficult that is to convince people to accept Jesus Christ their Savior, but that's a real difficult thing. But that's what it becomes because you got to talk to people about God, and so there's a lot of pushback on God. But the point I was leading to earlier was getting back to the disease thing. Can't operate on it, can't give it pills. So what do you possibly do for it? And then, so people don't have that to go to. It is a hereditary disease. That's pretty. That's proven. And the other issue becomes, and I'm having that happen right here now lately with some people I know, is they don't want to admit they're an addict. That whole admitting of an addict or an alcoholic or a drug addict or any kind of addiction that you have, when you announce that publicly, there's shame attached to that. Do not kid yourself. There's shame attached to it, and they feel bad as a person, but usually, I have to say this, it's sad to say, good things do not follow somebody that admits to being an alcoholic. I can tell you that in the business world. It's the deal. I know of nobody that has admitted they're an alcoholic that's successful in business. Some might be successful and not say they are, but it's pretty shunned upon. So you face that employment issue, that you're going to face as an addict, or because it's not looked upon as a disease. I can tell you that. I have brothers and sisters, and
so it's judgment. It's immediate judgment.
Judgment that is something I did to myself, and I deserve exactly what I got because I'm the one that did this. That's the general belief. You like to think more people believe it as a disease, but I don't think they do. Go ahead.
But when you say that you admitted it to yourself and you took accountability for what was going on with yourself, and you got to the point where a lot of people try to project what's going on inside them or their actions that they're taking in their life and the poor choices they're making. They try to project them onto others. But when we surrender completely and we face God and we lay it before the foot of the cross, and we admit we're carrying a cross. It's a tough journey, but it's that full surrender to admittance instead of projecting onto others that it's their fault. It's accepting that we are accountable for our actions and our choices, is what you're saying.
Correct. Yeah, that's part of the counseling. Acceptance is a key thing.
Acceptance.
Yep.
So continue.
Well, I was going to tell you that.
Tell us a little bit about your journey. If you could tell anyone, what was it that enlightened you when it came time for you to actually, you admitted to yourself, you said, but what inspired you to move forward in a positive way to get help were there things that happened in your life, or was it just that point where you met God one day?
No, I can trace back on that. I would say, I think I was born with with the disease of addiction. I think I've always had the need to get the endorphins going, whether it be playing a lot of sports, whatever it was. So I think that that played a part in it. In almost every case, it was nothing. That's why I make the point of people admitting. If you had cancer, you surely would go in the hospital, and people would say, "Hey, you got cancer." I'll go to the hospital. Nobody turns it down.
Right.
Nobody turns anything down. But because of the perception of addiction, there's no such thing happens where people are willingly just going in for treatment all the time. You know, hey, I think you might go to treatment. Okay, you know, so it's almost a case in every case where you hit rock bottom. Just about every case is you hit rock bottom before the pain is so bad, drinking becomes not fun, it becomes something you have to have, so you have to have it on a daily basis. I wasn't a morning drinker, but that doesn't make any difference. I drink enough from about 4 o'clock in the afternoon on that I was still drunk for most of the morning anyway. But you know that you have that you're addicted. I would say, you know, I can recall laying on my den floor and thinking, I'm addicted to this stuff. I'm addicted to alcohol, and it's a scary feeling to realize that you're addicted to something. But that's what happens in almost every case. In my case, I was getting so drunk, and this was over a 2-year period. And I would also say I'm a little bit unique in that I had a normal, good life for about 35 years. Raised 3 kids. I had quite a bit of success in business. You know, so I was kind of unique in that way. I mean, I maintained my drinking. I don't know. I guess I was just feared being an alcoholic. But
So you're a functioning alcoholic.
correct. I would never drink during working business time. Mm-hmm.
So it could be an addiction could be anything in excess. It doesn't necessarily have to be alcohol. And I know they go through this 12-step program, which I have heard described by a couple people that I've talked to about addiction. And addiction could be anything. It doesn't have to just be alcohol. Addiction can be shopping. It could be just anything in excess. Whether it affects, you know, our consciousness or not,
Right.
it still is something that's repeated consistently. And I think that we're looking to fill a void no matter what that addiction is. And all along, that void was filled, but we didn't go within side of ourselves to find out what that void was. But you describe it as you were born with it. What makes you feel that way? That you were born with it? Did you feel like you were destined? Did it run in your family? Was it something you had to deal with when you were growing up?
No, mother and father drank. My mother drank quite a bit. Matter of fact, beer. But never an issue, never a problem. I've got an uncle that's that's an alcoholic, and another aunt is an alcoholic. You know, so it's kind of present there. I played golf with the guy that he was a sports editor for the Boston Globe, and I was about 3 years sober, and I told him I was telling everybody I was an alcoholic for quite a while.
But that's surrender. That's admittance. That's surrender. There's nothing wrong with that.
Anyway, so
you can laugh about it now, right?
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
But he had this feeling that he thought professional athletes were addicts. He said he named golfers as an example. You know, they'll play a whole round of 18. First of all, they hit balls before they play golf balls, and they play a whole round of 18 holes, and then they go out and hit golf balls after because of the addiction. They're feeding that addiction of having to do something. So he thinks a lot of athletes have a degree of addiction for that reason. You know, always keeping going, always something to do. For drinking was an event for me towards the end. It was something to do. But as I look back on my life, I was constantly doing something. I mean, I was constantly either, I couldn't sit home. I was either playing basketball, playing baseball, playing tennis. I was constantly doing that for up until college, really. you know, go ahead.
And I know, like, on the spiritual journey, and that it's sort of like running away from ourselves. It's not wanting to sit in the stillness and actually look at ourselves in the mirror. It's avoidance, I think, and it's going out and trying to find something to keep you busy because we're sort of like in a denial of like, what are we running from, or what are we trying to get away from, or what is it inside of us that we're running from? Because if we're constantly trying to be busy and we can't sit still to the point where we can be still and hear the inner voice, the voice of God, as I call it, our conscience, our intuition, however you want to refer to it. Everyone has different beliefs. A higher power. It's just our higher self, you know, and some of us just can't sit in the stillness and face ourselves. So we run from it. Would you agree with that? Or would you have a different analysis of that?
What you're really getting involved in there is, again, another issue I have with this whole addiction. Disease of addiction is what you're getting into there is different types of addiction, different reasons why people drink, and you get into is there a psychological issue, for instance? You know, there could be a lot of different variables on why people drink, you know, but what it comes down to, I guess, you know, regardless of what they drink or what they do in terms of drugs, is the difference is, first of all, that is not unique for people to drink to feel better. There's 200 or 300 million people in this country that do that often, you know, so that's not a unique thing, you know. If people have their cocktails and stuff, that there's you'd say there's a whole industry, liquor and beer industry, that can attest to that. The difference is you can't they stop at a certain point. They don't overconsume and keep going, and they don't want to drink anymore. Okay, it's makes them sick or whatever, they just can't do it. Mm-hmm. Where an addict can, an alcoholic can consume massive amounts of liquor. I mean, I was astounded in my first treatment, a guy who would drink, he said, a handle of vodka a day. I was like, man, you know what that is? I said half a gallon.
A half a gallon is a handle?
A half gallon a day.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, I would say, you know, again, it's something I wish, you know, they'd do. I mean, I'll give you a real life story. A friend of mine, Lisa, as I tell a story about Lisa grew up with maids and butlers. That's the kind of world she came from. But at any rate, her great grandfather sold all the wood in almost every bowling alley in America, because he lived down in Savannah, Georgia. At any rate, Lisa I caught up with when she was about 8 years sober, and she appeared to be pretty well on her way, you know, but then she started drinking, and you know, so then I went up to help her, trying to help her some and everything. But kind of find out, you know, Lisa had been to like 6, 7 different rehabs. Her parents, and I talked to her parents quite a bit. Her parents said they spent somewhere between $300,000 and $500,000 on Lisa for this addiction she had, you know, because of this alcoholism she had, which is a massive amount, but they had tons of money. But at any rate, so they did that. Lisa is also an example too of a person I wanted to help her, and you know, she's done the 12 steps, she's done AA, she's done it all. So I just finally said to her, "Do you believe in God?" I mean, that's got to be it. And another case in point, she would not believe in God. You know, I could actually feel Satan around her place. But the issue with Lisa that never got addressed through all that money they spent, she had psychological problems. she had severe psychological problem. Look, if you have a psychological problem in your head, you got something going on in your head all the time, because you have that disease, it feels better to drink. You know, so it's a chicken or the egg thing. You know, if she didn't have this disease with these psychological problems, she wouldn't be drinking because she wouldn't have to drink because it wouldn't make her feel better. But having psychological problems, it made her drink. It made her feel better, which is very logical.
It was like our medicine, the solution to her problem.
Correct. So that that's a different type. You know, right there that that doesn't get addressed. I've been in rehab treatment with people, a couple of people, and I can't think of this girl's name now, but it was co-ed treatment. I said to her, she was like 23 years old. I said, "You're in the wrong place." I said, "You don't belong here." I said, her dad had died. She was real upset about that, and she was getting drunk, and they slammed her in addiction. I said, "You got psychological problems. You got issues. This is not for you." And in fact, now 10 years later, it was not for her. She's perfectly fine. But I would say, I mean, it's really hard to, somewhat upset with life. I would say, marriage wasn't all that great, I would say, but I really can't put a handle on it. I mean, I have such a history too of not drinking, of quitting drinking, and it wasn't even a big deal. So again, I'm not your typical story of somebody that started drinking at a young age and then couldn't quit. I mean, between the ages of, I drank in high school, and then I went to college. I didn't drink at all in college. And then I did drink some when I went home, with my mom and stuff, but I didn't have a beer in the dorm room or anything. And then I became a born again Christian. Even though I was a Christian, I was a Catholic. I got involved in the born again Christian movement and Bible studies and things. But so there, I again quit with no problem. But for 3 years, I don't remember it being a big deal, but I did. So I've had moments like that where I've not drank, but I couldn't. Once you get addicted to it, I mean, it's real difficult to overcome. I did work the 12 steps. I do give credit to A for me maintaining my sobriety. I did not acquire my sobriety with AA. Like I said, I went to the treatment centers, but to me, it's all that stuff's like secondary. I mean, what you do afterward is all secondary, because my story will become and ever will be said. I say it every day. I owe my sobriety to Jesus Christ, God. I could not have done this on my own. It is an impossibility.
Amen to that.
So I can tell you that. So that's how I feel about it.
And when we talk about God, and I always say, when we were born and we took our first breath of life, we were perfect, and God made us in all perfection. And then came the social conditioning, and I think a lot of it is conditioning of the mind throughout our lives that maybe makes people feel like they're not good enough, or they're not worthy enough, or
Correct.
Ashamed, or
Correct.
Because it's the social conditioning, it's the labels that everybody puts on everybody. Whereas like you said, with cancer and alcoholism, it's a label, but when it all comes down to it, there's healing within that needs to take place. There's a block somewhere, or there's a void somewhere that needs to be released or addressed, like you said with your friend Lisa.
Right.
It's facing that and not running from it to something else to try to comfort it. And I think there's only one place to go. And
Right.
That's within, where God lives within us. And He is there for us. And He made us in His likeness. And life there's no judgment. He doesn't God doesn't judge us, but everybody else does. And I think a lot of it comes from social conditioning, that people do run or get into it. Any form of addiction is because they don't feel accepted in society as the norm. Just like you say, they don't treat alcoholism as a disease, but they'll do everything in the world for cancer, but they won't do anything
Right.
for mental illness or alcoholism. It's a judgment, it's social conditioning, it's categories, it's labeling, it's good labels, it's bad labels. Like someone that golfs to an excess amount of golfing would be looked upon as, oh, he's so wonderful. But someone that drinks excessively, that's bad, you know. And that's what I mean about society and judgment and putting labels on things. And God, God does not do that. But people do. And I think that's what causes a lot of voids within people, that they can't look at themselves because of the outside world that has labeled them as something different. But if we go within our heart where the Lord lives, not in our mind, but in our heart, we can find that place of His love and light that does not judge us. And I know you mentioned to me about the 12-step program, and I've heard many describe it as it is a spiritual awakening. But you described it to me the other day. What brought my attention to you and your story is the 10 Commandments. You said it's the 10 Commandments. So could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure, that's a good question. First, before I elaborate on that, regarding this addiction issue and different types of addiction, it becomes whatever makes your life unmanageable. That's in step one, matter of fact. If it makes your life unmanageable, then that's a issue of addiction. But yes, they don't like this when I point this out. I haven't said it in a while because I get too many bad looks. But yes, the 12 steps is merely an embellishment of the 10 Commandments. It's very similar to the 10 Commandments. It mirrors it in many, many, many ways. It's pretty much taking the 10 Commandments and throwing a couple of extra things in there, and you got your 12 steps. But but they get a lot of credit for it. People just think that it's unbelievable what this guy thought of all that stuff, and he didn't have to think about it too much. But he does mention God and Jesus Christ in the book. God like it probably about 400 times. Jesus Christ about 3 or 4 times. But when he first came out with this, corporations tried to put their arms around that 12-step program, and instill that in their employees, because it's such a good thing. It's a good way to lead your life. I mean, that's what that becomes. 12 steps becomes a way of life and the way you should lead your life.
It's an example.
It's an example, correct. I mean, you're forgiving of people. You apologize. You try to be as nice as you possibly can. You reach out to people, try and help them. I mean, there's all kinds of goodness in there where you're just a better citizen in general. And it's a good way of life to lead your life. And so, and there's rewards, as you help out other people. You're suggesting that you do reach out to help other people as part of the program. It's called some of the top name addiction centers in America for life. And I have to catch up with her now 9 years ago. I was in the front end of my sobriety, but I have to catch up with her. And she, in fact, was an addict. And she, in fact, had gone out again, as we call it. This is a person that is highly thought of as an expert in the disease of addiction. She had gone out. And I pretty much just looked at her and I said, Vicki, I said, you of all people, I mean, you know everything there is to possibly know about this. Mm-hmm. You've been paid lots of money. I said, you of all people, how could it be? And she says, I couldn't get the higher power. And from there on in, I said, there is again. There's a person that is doing everything you possibly can do, but she couldn't get a higher power. Now, they highly suggest it's God. It can be meditation, can be another form of it. The concept is anything that gets you out of your own mind and into the spiritual world. So anyway.
Because the mind is the enemy.
Right.
And it lies. It
Correct.
tells us lies.
Correct.
And everything is love. And everything stems from love. And it's that heart center, you know, like God lives in our heart, your higher power, anything. If you go within your heart is where you'll find the answers. Like God places a desire in our heart, a passion for something. And I write in my book, Pure Inspiration, about addiction and how we can turn that addiction into a passion. No matter what it is, what is your desire in your heart? What is your passion? Take that passion and use that passion to take away the pain. So if addiction does stem from pain, for some people, not all, to find that passion, like what makes you happy, what makes you joyful. And God places those desires in our heart to be joyful and to, you know, and He has a plan and a purpose for us. And we have a purpose in this world, and it's to shine our light upon others in some fashion, whether that be, you know, like you did, you were quite a salesman and you helped promote people's products and get them out there, and they became very successful because of you. And that was, I think, a great purpose, because marketing is not the easiest thing in the world. It's really difficult to market. And it takes a special kind of person to be able to do that. Like I'm great in branding and business, but when it comes to marketing, it's a little bit different. But that's when we go to others to help support us and to be the best that we can possibly be. And that's where that all comes into play, where you say to help others. And if we all come together without judgment, we could help each other be the best we can possibly be. And that's what it's all about. But it's interesting to know about the 12-step program and how you relate it to the 10 Commandments. Can you share the 12 steps with us?
I never memorized them. No.
It's just basically knowing that.
No, that should be a whole nother segment. Really need to go down. You know, write down. No, I don't. I never. I worked them, and because that was, you know, I would have done anything, you know, so I didn't drink again because it was so painful at the end. And then the detoxes were terrible. But I worked them real careful and spent a lot of time on them. Right? It wasn't like I, you know, got one done today and then tomorrow I'll do the next one and that kind of thing. But my thinking was, if this is what that is what they provide. That is the cure, is the 12-step program. Okay, so if that's what they provide, that's what I'll do. And although I can't memorize them, I spent a year doing the steps, 1 full year doing the steps, and then I paused for 2 months, and then I spent another full year doing the steps. I don't have them memorized.
But it's basically just
Making programming those steps into a way of life. How you lead your life on a daily basis is what it becomes.
For the highest good of all.
Right,
for
right.
ourselves and for those around us. And I mean, that's with anything, not just this 12-step program. And you talked about meditation, which is a big part of my life, because I think being in that stillness and being alone in that sacred space, and, you know, taking the time to, well, I meditate to be one with God, to become one with Him. It's my sacred time, it's my sacred space, and it's just being still and listening to His voice and what, you know, messages I want to receive, He wants to give me. But it's a time of reflection also. Like you said, what can you do to be a better you? How can you help other people? And I guess that's what it's all about. You know, it's coming together and helping one another and supporting each other. So I'm really grateful that you were willing to share your story, Thomas, with everyone, because it does help. Even if it's one person, I always say, even if it's one person that we help through whatever we do, it's one person that's a lot. In my eyes, that's a lot. So thank you so much for sharing with us today. Is there anything else you want to add?
No.
Any advice for anyone out there?
No, I mean, it's, I recommend treatment, I would say. I mean, but you can really get ripped off on them pretty bad.
Yeah.
You've got to really you've really got to put a lot of study into them to make sure you get the right treatment center. So I recommended treatments. I mean, I looked at the first one I went to in terms of cost was it was in a hospital, but in terms of cost was real fine.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It was $1,500 a day, and I was there for 38 days.
Wow.
That brings up to a big number. But my wife had insurance, and it was terrible. I mean, I wouldn't recommend that to my worst enemy, as I would say. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. The second one I went to, I just spent a lot of time. I looked into it myself, and what I looked for was people that had a lot of education that were counselors, either a master's or a doctorate. It's allowed for them to be counselors. That's what I looked for. And but you still need treatment. I mean, it's like any disease. I mean, it's a disease. You don't get a cure there. I mean, you're far from it. So you still need you still need some kind of treatment. I spent a lot of time again reading spiritual things and prayer. I mean, but that was my way, and I went to meetings because it's a composite of a few different ingredients like that. To be able to maintain your sobriety one day at a time is our thing. One day at a time.
And I always say it's one moment at a time. Like, if we live our life in the present moment and just take that moment and deal with that moment instead of thinking about the past or the future, just focus on that.
One day at a time. One day at a time makes life much better. That's a concept that I didn't have my arms around before I became an addict and admitted it. The one day at a time thing is a good way to go about things.
There you go. I like that. I go one moment at a time because I don't want to miss what God's shown me in the present moment.
You start forecasting out, you start getting depressed.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why he tells us to just be still and know. It's the not knowing what's going to happen that we're good. You know what I mean? He has it. It's a lot of faith too, and just knowing that he has it. He's got this. I have nothing to worry about. I'm enjoying my moment. What's he showing me right now? I don't want to miss it.
Right.
Because God's full of blessings.
God's will, I would say. I mean, that's a concept I wrap everything around is God's will. I mean, I kept on saying
absolutely.
God's will, God's will. That's all I kept on saying. God's will, God's will. Mm-hmm. And still do say the same thing.
And that it's thy will be done, not our will, but thy will be done.
Correct.
And when we do put it in the Lord's hands, everything turns out perfectly.
Right. It's not a willpower thing, as people think. I'll close with this, but if you think willpower works so good, try that next time you have diarrhea.
Oh my goodness. No, we're usually sitting there saying, please God, make it stop.
Use that willpower.
Oh my goodness, that was hilarious. Anyways, thank you so much, Thomas, for being here. I'm so grateful and blessed to be a part of your journey.
All right.
And a pleasure to have you as a client also.
Yep.
Faithful,
Good to be here.
loyal
Go help
client.
somebody.
Yeah. So thank you all for joining us, and please don't forget to like and subscribe and share if there's someone you know that would benefit from hearing this podcast. And thank you all once again for your likes and subscribes. I'm so blessed and grateful to all of you out there. Until we meet again, namaste.